My daughter-in-law changed my Do-Not-Resuscitate form. The doctor froze when I spoke. One Mrs. Holloway isn't responding to treatment. The doctor's voice carried through the hospital room where I lay motionless in the ICU bed, machines beeping steadily around me. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow and controlled. Through my barely open eyelids, I could see my daughter-in-law Victoria standing beside my son Nathan at the foot of my bed. Given her DNR order, we won't intervene if her heart stops, the doctor continued. Victoria's hand tightened on Nathan's arm. That's what she wanted, she said, her voice carefully measured. We need to respect her wishes. What they didn't know was that I could hear every word. The stroke hadn't stolen my consciousness, only my ability to move or speak. And what they really didn't know was that I had never signed a Do-Not-Resuscitate form. 3 weeks earlier, I had been a healthy 72-year-old woman, managing my late husband's construction company. Then came the stroke that left me locked inside my own body. The symptoms started during a Tuesday morning meeting with my accountant. My right hand went numb. Words tangled on my tongue. By the time the ambulance arrived, I couldn't move my right side or speak clearly. The doctors called it a severe ischemic stroke. They said recovery would take months, maybe years. They said I might never fully regain my speech or mobility. Nathan had arrived at the hospital within hours, his face pale with worry. Victoria came later, her expression carefully arranged into concern. But I saw something else flicker across her features when the doctors explained my condition. Relief. That should have been my first warning. Instead, I focused on fighting my way back to consciousness, on trying to communicate through the fog that surrounded my brain. The first week passed in a blur of tests and assessments. I could hear everything: conversations between nurses, updates from doctors, Nathan's worried phone calls to relatives. But I couldn't respond. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink to show I understood. The medical term was locked-in syndrome, a rare condition where the mind remains sharp, but the body refuses to cooperate. By the second week, I had regained some awareness of my surroundings. I could feel pressure, hear clearly, and understand every word spoken around me. But moving or speaking remained impossible. The neurologist explained to Nathan that it might take months before I showed signs of improvement. Victoria stood beside him during these conversations, nodding sympathetically. "We'll take care of everything," she assured the doctors. "Her medical decisions, her business, all of it. She doesn't need to worry." Something in her tone made my invisible skin crawl. My husband Thomas had died 2 years earlier, leaving me his construction company, Holloway Builders. We had built it together over 40 years, starting with nothing and growing it into a respected business worth millions. Nathan worked in marketing and had never shown interest in construction. Victoria had worked as a receptionist when they met 5 years ago. Neither understood the business, but both understood its value. I had planned to sell the company eventually, and had been negotiating with a competitor who wanted to buy us out for a substantial sum. The deal would have secured Nathan's future while rewarding our employees. But that deal required my signature, my approval, my active participation. The third week brought unexpected visitors to my hospital room. My lawyer, Bernard Foster, arrived with papers he needed me to sign. "I'm sorry," the nurse told him. "Mrs. Holloway can't sign anything in her current condition. She's not responsive." "Then who has power of attorney?" Bernard asked. Victoria appeared in the doorway. "I do. Nathan and I have been handling Eleanor's affairs since the stroke." That was news to me. Bernard's expression grew cautious. "I don't have any record of Eleanor granting power of attorney to anyone." "It was done right after Thomas died," Victoria said smoothly. "Eleanor wanted to make sure someone could handle things if anything happened to her. You can check with her previous attorney if you need verification." My previous attorney had retired 6 months ago. Convenient timing. Bernard left, clearly uncomfortable, but unable to challenge Victoria's claim without proof. After he departed, I heard Victoria's heels clicking across the floor as she approached my bed. "You should have set things up properly before this happened," she whispered near my ear. "Now Nathan and I have to clean up your mess. Don't worry though, we'll take good care of the company." Ice flooded my veins. This woman had somehow obtained control of my life while I lay helpless. The next morning, Victoria returned with Nathan and Dr. Pierce, my attending physician. "We need to discuss Eleanor's advance directives," Victoria said, her voice heavy with false sadness. "She told us many times that she wouldn't want to be kept alive by machines if there was no hope of recovery." Nathan nodded, his eyes red from crying. "Mom was always clear about that. She saw what happened when my grandfather was on life support for months. She made us promise we'd never let that happen to her." I wanted to scream. I had never said anything of the kind. My father had died peacefully in his sleep. There had been no prolonged hospital stay, no machines, no difficult decisions. "I understand," Dr. Pierce said gently. "Do you have documentation of her wishes?" Victoria produced a folder. "Here's her DNR order, signed and witnessed. She filled this out 2 years ago, right after Thomas died. She was very specific about her preferences." Dr. Pierce reviewed the document carefully. My signature appeared at the bottom, neat and clear. Except I had never signed it. The handwriting was good, too good. Someone had practiced copying my signature until they could replicate it perfectly. "This appears to be in order," Dr. Pierce said finally. "I'll add it to her file. If Mrs. That Holloway's condition deteriorates and her heart stops, we won't attempt resuscitation." "Thank you," Victoria said, squeezing Nathan's hand. "This is so hard, but we know it's what she would have wanted." After they left, a young nurse named Carrie came to check my vitals. She hummed softly while adjusting my IV line. "You poor thing," she murmured. "So young to give up. 72 isn't old these days. My grandmother is 85 and still runs marathons." She leaned closer, checking my pupils with a small flashlight. "I don't know why, but something about that DNR doesn't sit right with me. Your daughter-in-law seems awfully eager to follow it." Carrie's words gave me hope. Someone else sensed something wrong, but hope without action meant nothing, and I remained frozen inside my unresponsive body. That night, I focused all my energy on trying to move. Just one finger, one toe. Anything to show I was still present. Nothing responded. The next day brought more visitors. Victoria arrived with a man I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Holloway," the stranger said, standing at my bedside. "I'm James Caldwell from Caldwell Properties. Your daughter-in-law tells me you're interested in selling Holloway Builders." "My company." They were selling my company. "Eleanor wanted this taken care of before the stroke," Victoria explained. "She was worried about the business becoming a burden on Nathan. She asked me to handle the negotiations if anything happened to her." Lies. All lies. "The offer is generous," Caldwell continued. $3 million for the company, equipment, and client list. That's well below market value, but given the circumstances, no active owner, uncertain future, it's fair. Fair? The company was worth at least $8 million. Possibly more with our current contracts. "We appreciate your understanding," Victoria said. "Eleanor would want this resolved quickly. Nathan isn't equipped to run a construction company, and keeping it would just create problems." They discussed terms and timelines, treating my life's work like a burden to be disposed of cheaply. After Caldwell left, Victoria made a phone call in the hallway, outside my room. I could hear her through the partially open door. "It's perfect. The DNR is filed, the power of attorney is solid, and Caldwell is offering $3 million. We'll split it with him after the sale goes through and keep the other 5 for ourselves. By the time anyone questions anything, Eleanor will be gone, and the company will be his." My daughter-in-law had forged my signature on multiple documents. She had created a fake DNR order. She was planning to sell my company for a fraction of its worth, and pocket the difference with a corrupt buyer. And she was waiting for me to die to cover her tracks. But Victoria had made one critical error. She assumed I couldn't hear, couldn't understand, couldn't fight back. The 4th week brought a breakthrough. During a routine examination, I managed to twitch my left index finger. Just once. Just slightly. But it was movement. Dr. Pierce didn't notice, the nurse didn't notice, but I had felt it, controlled it. Hope surged through me. If I could move one finger once, I could do it again. I spent every waking moment focusing on that finger, willing it to respond. By week 5, I could move it consistently. Not enough to attract attention during quick checks, but enough to know I was fighting my way back. Nathan visited daily, sitting beside my bed and talking about his childhood. "Remember when Dad taught me to use the saw?" he asked one afternoon. I was so scared I'd cut myself. But you said I'd be fine because Holloway's no construction in their bones. His voice cracked. I should have paid more attention. Maybe then I could keep the company going instead of selling it. Sweet, foolish Nathan. He genuinely believed selling was necessary. Victoria had manipulated him completely, using his grief and fear to control every decision. Victoria says we should move you to a long-term care facility soon, Nathan continued. Somewhere more affordable than the hospital. She's been so good through all this, Mom, handling everything while I fall apart. A long-term care facility. Somewhere with less oversight, fewer doctors, more opportunity for accidents. Victoria's plan was becoming clearer. On day 36, Carrie came for the night shift and found me with my eyes fully open. Mrs. Holloway? She moved closer, checking my pupils again. Can you hear me? Blink if you understand. I focused every ounce of will into my left eyelid. It flickered, barely. But it moved. Carrie gasped. You're in there. Oh my God, you're conscious. She pressed the call button, summoning Dr. Pierce. When he arrived, skeptical but professional, I repeated the blink. Then another. This changes everything, Dr. Pierce said, his voice full of wonder. She's emerging from the locked-in state. This is remarkable. What about the DNR? Carrie asked. Dr. Pierce frowned. We'll need to reassess. If she's conscious and can communicate, we need to determine her actual wishes. Should we call her family? Carrie asked. Not yet, Dr. Pierce replied. Let's establish reliable communication first. Mrs. Holloway, can you blink once for yes and twice for no? I blinked once. Over the next hour they established a system. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no, 3 for uncertain. It was slow and frustrating, but it was communication. The DNR order in your file, Dr. Pierce said carefully. Did you sign it? 2 blinks. No. His expression darkened. Did you give your daughter-in-law power of attorney? 2 blinks. No. Do you want us to follow the DNR if your heart stops? 2 blinks. Emphatic, repeated. No, no, no. Dr. Pierce stood abruptly. Carrie, document everything. Time, questions, responses. I'm calling the hospital administrator and security. We have a serious problem. Within 30 minutes, hospital security had sealed my room. A patient advocate arrived to witness my responses. Bernard Foster was contacted and arrived by morning. Eleanor, can you answer questions about your estate? Bernard asked. 1 blink. Yes. Did you give Victoria power of attorney? 2 blinks. No. No. Did you authorize sale of Holloway Builders? 2 blinks. No. Did you sign a DNR order? 2 blinks. No. Bernard's face grew grim. Did Victoria forge your signature on these documents? 1 blink. Yes. The room exploded into action. Police were called. A forensic document examiner was contacted. And Victoria, who had called that morning to check on her beloved mother-in-law, was asked to come to the hospital immediately for an urgent family meeting. She arrived an hour later with Nathan, both looking worried. What's wrong? Nathan asked immediately. Is Mom okay? Dr. Pierce stood by my bed. Your mother has regained consciousness. She can communicate by blinking. Victoria's face went perfectly still. Just for a moment. Then concern flooded her features. That's wonderful. Eleanor, can you hear me? 1 blink. Mrs. Holloway has been answering questions, Bernard said, stepping forward, including questions about legal documents filed in her name. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes grew calculating. Of course, we're so grateful she's improving. She says she never signed a DNR order, Bernard continued. She says she never gave you power of attorney. That's impossible. Victoria said smoothly. She signed both documents in my presence. The stress of the stroke must be affecting her memory. Nathan looked between his wife and his mother, confusion evident on his face. Mom? He approached my bed. Did you sign those papers? 1 blink. Yes. Victoria's tension eased slightly, but Nathan wasn't finished. Wait, 1 blink means yes? He looked at Dr. Pierce, who nodded. Nathan turned back to me, understanding dawning. Mom, did you authorize Victoria to sell the company? 2 blinks. No. Did you give her power of attorney? 2 blinks. No. Did Victoria forge your signature? 1 blink. Yes. Nathan stepped back from the bed, staring at his wife in horror. Vicky? This is ridiculous, Victoria snapped, her careful composure cracking. She's barely conscious. She doesn't know what she's saying. She's not saying anything, Dr. Pierce interrupted. She's communicating clearly and consistently, and her responses match what we suspected when we examined the documents more closely. A security guard stepped forward. Mrs. Victoria Holloway, We need you to come with us. The police want to ask you some questions about suspected fraud and forgery. Victoria's mask finally shattered. You can't prove anything. Those are her signatures. Anyone can see that. The forensic examiner disagrees, Bernard said quietly. The pressure patterns are wrong. The pen strokes are too careful. These signatures were copied, not written naturally. Victoria's eyes darted to the door, but 2 more security guards blocked the exit. Nathan, she pleaded, turning to my son. You know, I was just trying to help. Your mother was dying. Someone had to make decisions. She's not dying, Nathan said, his voice hollow. You wanted her to die. The police arrived and took Victoria into custody. Nathan collapsed into the chair beside my bed, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I trusted her. I thought she was helping. I managed to move my left hand slightly, just enough to touch his arm. He grabbed my hand, tears streaming down his face. Over the following days, the full scope of Victoria's fraud emerged. She had forged my signature on the power of attorney document 6 months earlier, while I was still healthy. She had created the DNR order after my stroke, practicing my signature until she could replicate it perfectly. She had been planning to sell Holloway Builders to Caldwell Properties for $3 million, while he would immediately resell it to a larger company for $8 million. They planned to split the $5 million difference. If I had died following the fake DNR order, no one would have questioned the sale. Nathan would have inherited $3 million, believing his mother had wanted the company sold. Victoria would have walked away with $2.5 million, free and clear. But I hadn't died. I had fought my way back. My recovery accelerated once the truth was known. With intensive therapy, I regained limited speech within 2 months. My right side remained weak, but I could move, could talk, could sign my own documents. Victoria was charged with fraud, forgery, and attempted murder. Yes, murder. The prosecutor argued that creating a false DNR order for someone who didn't want one constituted attempted murder if medical staff followed it. Nathan filed for divorce immediately. He hadn't known about Victoria's plans, but guilt consumed him. I should have questioned things he told me during one therapy session. When she said you'd sign papers I'd never seen, I should have demanded proof. You trusted your wife, I managed to say, my words slow but clear. That's not wrong. She's the one who betrayed that trust. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Victoria's defense attorney argued that she had been trying to spare the family difficult decisions during a crisis. The prosecution presented evidence of her communications with Caldwell, showing clear intent to defraud. The forged signatures were examined by experts who testified to their fraudulent nature. Carrie, the nurse who had first suspected something was wrong, testified about Victoria's suspicious behavior and eagerness to enforce the DNR. She seemed more interested in when Mrs. Holloway would die than whether she would recover, Carrie said. That's what made me uncomfortable. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Victoria guilty on all counts. 3 counts of forgery, 2 counts of fraud, and 1 count of attempted murder. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison. You targeted a vulnerable woman for financial gain, the judge said during sentencing. You forged legal documents that could have resulted in her death. Your actions were calculated, methodical, and showed complete disregard for human life. This court takes such crimes very seriously. Nathan attended the sentencing, sitting beside my wheelchair in the courtroom gallery. When Victoria was led away in handcuffs, she glared at me with such hatred that several people gasped. You should have died, she hissed as guards pulled her toward the door. Everything would have been fine if you'd just died like you were supposed to. But I didn't, I replied, my voice stronger now after months of therapy. I fought back, and you underestimated what a 72-year-old woman can survive. The investigation into Caldwell Properties revealed a pattern of similar schemes. He had approached families of elderly business owners, offering to buy companies at reduced prices during health crises. Victoria wasn't his first accomplice, she was just the first to get caught. Caldwell was charged with conspiracy and fraud in multiple states. His real estate empire collapsed within weeks. 6 months after my stroke, I returned to Holloway Builders. I couldn't work full days yet, but I could oversee operations and make decisions. Nathan, to his credit, had kept the company running during my recovery. He would never love construction the way his father and I had. But he understood its importance now. "I'm learning," he told me during a site visit. "Dad used to say you can't appreciate what you haven't built. I understand that now." I hired a management team to handle day-to-day operations and began training a successor. Not family this time. Someone who loved the work and understood the business. My experience had taught me that blood relations meant nothing without trust and integrity. The legal victory brought unexpected attention. Several news outlets ran stories about the woman who had survived attempted murder by blinking. Advocacy groups invited me to speak about elder fraud and the importance of protecting vulnerable adults. "You became a symbol," Bernard told me during one of our regular meetings. "People see you as proof that you can fight back, even when circumstances seem impossible." 1 year after my stroke, I attended a conference for elder rights advocates. A young woman approached me afterward, her eyes filled with tears. "My grandmother is in a similar situation," she said. "Her caregiver is pressuring her to change her will, and we can't prove anything. Your story gave me hope that we can stop this before it's too late." I gave her Bernard's contact information and the names of investigators who specialized in elder fraud. "Document everything," I advised. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." 2 months later, she contacted me to say her grandmother's caregiver had been arrested for attempted fraud. The documentation they'd gathered had been enough to prove intent before any documents were actually forged. "You saved my grandmother," she said. "Your story made us take action instead of waiting until it was too late." Those moments made my ordeal worthwhile. Victoria had tried to erase me, to profit from my death. Instead, she had created an advocate who could warn others about the dangers hidden in plain sight. Nathan eventually met someone new, a teacher named Olivia who had no interest in Holloway builders or my money. "I just want you to like me," she said nervously the first time we met. "Nathan's been through so much, he deserves someone who genuinely cares about him." "Then you and I will get along fine," I replied. They married 2 years after Victoria's conviction. Small ceremony, close friends only. I walked Nathan down the aisle, slowly, leaning heavily on my cane, but walking under my own power. "Thank you for fighting," he whispered before we reached the altar. "Thank you for surviving. I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you." "You would have moved forward," I said. "That's what Holloways do. We build things and we keep going." At 75, I'm slower than I once was. My right hand still doesn't work quite right. Some words stick in my throat before I can speak them. But I'm alive, active, and determined to make every day count. Victoria will be eligible for parole in 11 years. The thought doesn't frighten me anymore. She took so much, my health, my sense of security, my ability to trust easily. But she didn't take my life. And she didn't take my will to keep building, keep fighting, keep moving forward. The company is thriving. Nathan found his place in it, not as a builder, but as someone who connects us to communities and opportunities. The management team I hired has expanded our reach into sustainable building practices. We're creating something that will outlast all of us. Your father would be proud, Bernard told me recently. Of the company, of Nathan, of how you've handled everything. Thomas would have known something was wrong immediately, I replied. He was better at reading people than I was. You caught Victoria eventually, Bernard pointed out. You survived and exposed her. That's what matters. On the 5-year anniversary of my stroke, Dr. Pierce invited me to speak at a medical conference about locked-in syndrome and recovery. I stood at the podium, not sat in a wheelchair, and told my story to a room full of doctors and nurses. The medical team saved my life by listening to one nurse's instincts, I concluded. Carrie didn't ignore what felt wrong. She advocated for me when I couldn't advocate for myself. That vigilance, that willingness to question what seems right on paper, but feels wrong in practice, that's what stops people like my daughter-in-law from succeeding. The applause was substantial, but more important were the doctors who approached afterward with questions about recognizing similar situations. As I left the hospital that evening, I paused at the entrance where ambulances had brought me 5 years earlier. I had been dying then. Not from the stroke itself, but from my daughter-in-law's carefully constructed plan to let me die. But I survived. I had fought back using the only weapon available to me, one blinking eye, and the determination to make people understand. Victoria had tried to erase me. Instead, she had proven that even at 72, trapped in a failing body, I was stronger than she ever imagined. My daughter-in-law changed my do not resuscitate form. The doctor froze when I spoke,